We're in beautiful British Columbia, and we want you to join our conversation as we begin a new 4-part Bible study series on the book of Philippians, beginning with what it means to live in community with prayer and unity. That's coming up. Well, welcome to See, Hear, Love, and you have joined us for a very special 4-part series on a conversation about the book of Philippians. See, Hear, Love has never done this. I've never done this before, and we thought, what a perfect time to do a series about Philippians with some girlfriends here in beautiful British Columbia. Welcome, Krista. Welcome, Melinda.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Let me gush a little bit about you, and then I want to talk a little bit about why we're doing this. But Krista Penner, you work in church ministry in leadership development.
Yes.
You are an incredible speaker, a wonderful writer. So welcome, glad to have you here.
Thank you.
And Alita, you are a writer, Bible teacher, and you work in local church ministry here as well.
That's right.
Okay.
Thanks for having me.
So I really loved this idea, and we've never done this before, to bring girlfriends around the table, to invite women and men across the world to join us to get into the Bible.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us, have grown up in the Bible and reading scriptures, but there's also generations that have never opened a Bible, don't even know what it is. And so I thought this would be a great time to invite people to study with us. So if you need some notes, go right now to seeherelove.com/study guide. Download the guide so that you can follow along with us. Grab a Bible or open up your iPhone, tablet, get out Philippians, because we're going through 4 weeks, 4 series on living in community, living a generous life, living with confidence, and living out your faith. So we're going to walk those through every single week. So I'm really excited. I hope you guys are too.
Yes,
I know, and we've never done this, and it's
absolutely.
like, we have a big enough table that we could have invited way more women to join us.
That would have been so fun.
So that would have been great. And I know, Krista, we talked about Philippians. Why did we had talked about it, but you were like, we need to do the book of Philippians.
Well, when we started talking about this idea, I really felt you look at that book, there's so much practical application for our lives that transcends culture, transcends time. So I am really looking forward to diving into these themes and pulling out stuff that we can actually apply every day to our lives. And this was a letter written by the Apostle Paul with great love and affection for these people. And there's great love and affection in this book for us as well.
Yeah, I really like that. And I love the fact that it's 4 chapters. We're not giving like a huge book where it's like, guys, be with us for 16 weeks.
That's right.
Stay with us. It's 4. So I believe it's manageable.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited we have the study guide. And Alita, I think it's important too that as anybody goes into read the scripture, we should have some context.
Absolutely.
Like sometimes people read it and they're like, I don't even know what's going on.
Right.
And so they can take words out of context if you don't know context. Right. So give us a little bit of the background of what's happening in Philippians so that we know we're ready and so we can go in with fresh eyes on this.
Sure. Well, like Krista mentioned, it was a letter written by Paul to the church at Philippi. We know based on Acts 16, if you ever go in and read it, you get a really good background on how the church came to be. But essentially it's a 10-year-old church whenever Paul is writing this letter. And so these are, again, great people that he had just deep affection for, and he really, really loved them. And so it was written in about 60 to 62 AD, and the church was experiencing, not just this church, but the church was experiencing persecution.
Wow.
And so Paul was in jail when he was writing the letter to them, so he himself was experiencing, not the best of times.
Yeah.
And so this is the context for the book of Philippians. This is where we are.
Okay, so Christians are being persecuted. The writer is in jail.
Yes, that's right.
So this is good so that if people are feeling the same way in that there's, they're relating. They can relate.
Right. And one thing that I think is maybe important to note at the top end of this study is that even given all of these circumstances, things aren't great. There's still a lot of rejoicing that we're going to read about in the book, which is this tension that many of us feel, even today. Like Krista said, the book transcends time and culture, and so we feel some of that as well in our own lives. The rejoicing in the middle of hard times.
Yeah,
All
that's
right.
right.
Well, I have my pen out.
Okay.
Yay.
I've got my notes and I'm ready to go. And I know for you who are listening and watching, you've downloaded the study guide and you're going to kind of work this through with us. So let's start going through. So this is chapter 1 of Philippians, and the theme is living in community.
That's right.
For some people are like, yay, and for some people are like, oh no.
Yeah.
So I
That's
think this
right.
is going to be a good discussion on that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So just 2 things that stuck out to me. This is not
Okay.
an exhaustive look at the first chapter, just a couple of things about living in community that I'd love to just kind of do a roundtable discussion on.
Okay.
Is that Paul shows us, first of all, that healthy community means that we should be praying for one another and how to pray for one another.
Okay.
He does that right off the bat in verses 3 through 11. He starts by praying for the church at Philippi. And this is interesting for a few reasons, but we see him do 3 things, maybe more, but I'm going to talk about 3 things.
Okay.
Or I want to mention 3 things. He says that he prays for them with thankfulness,
Okay.
with joy, and with confidence. Thankfulness,
Yeah.
joy, and confidence.
Okay.
Verse 3, he says, I thank my God every time I remember you. Just that statement in and of itself is a little wild to me because that's not my natural personality. It doesn't matter if it's my best friend. When they pop into my mind, sometimes I might pray for a person, but it's not just always my knee-jerk reaction to just immediately pray for someone. So I'm actually wondering, whenever people pop into your mind, is this a thing for you?
Well, you know what's interesting is over the years of praying for people, I've done some crazy prayers.
Okay.
I've prayed for people in parking lots when I see them, and
Okay.
they're like, nobody's done that for me before. But the thing that always strikes me when I see this is the idea of thankfulness changes how I feel about that person. So
Yeah,
there's
that's good.
times when I don't really like somebody, or they're annoying, or they're extra grace required kind of people in my life, right? But when I stop and I thank God for them, it changes me.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm actually intercessing on their behalf. And
Yeah.
it's such a powerful posture in my life. And it does something.
Yeah.
It does something. Yeah. So I think it's important.
I love that. And you said thankfulness. And I think about joy. I mean, and here's the thing. For me, for prayer, even when I was young, anytime I would see somebody walking down the road, I honestly would feel God say, pray for them. So there's probably like thousands of people have been prayed for by me that have no idea.
Yes.
And you're welcome. You're welcome for my prayer. But it always came to me. And I'd see somebody waiting at the bus stop and I'd pray. So there's that part where that was the one thing, even as a child, I could do.
Yeah.
It was just sort of this thing that God said, you don't have to be a big pastor on stage, you just have to pray.
Yes.
And when I prompt you, do it.
That's
so that
so
was
good.
really simple. But the other thing I thought was interesting about the joy part, because there's sometimes you're just like, I don't want to pray joy for that person. I don't want to, I don't want to be joyful for them. I kind of not really loving them. I'm going to pray more joy for me and not kind of bless them in my prayer. You know what I mean? Like it's almost like a changing of,
It's like a holding on to the joy for yourself, like almost.
right? And so I think that's really, interesting and a good reminder about when you think of somebody. Yeah.
And you know what's
praying-
interesting as you say that now? This just dawned on me. Joy dissipates judgment.
Oh, I like that.
So
That's
as
really
soon
good.
as I actually want to bless somebody with joy, I quit judging them.
It's true.
And that's
Changes everything.
It changes everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
It's
Yeah.
interesting as we're saying this, it's like this thing that we're supposed to do for others, which you're like, that's going to change them. It's actually about changing us.
Absolutely.
Right? It's like,
Absolutely.
okay, I see what's going on.
Absolutely.
I see what's going on.
I
That's
love
good.
that. Well, and then he goes on in verse 6 and he says he prays being confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion
Love
until
that.
the day of Christ Jesus. And so, this whole idea of being confident in our prayers, that's one element of it. But it's not just that he's confident in praying, he's confident of a specific thing, that Jesus Christ is going to carry out a good work that he's started. He'll be faithful to finish it.
Yeah.
And again, this is one of those things where I'm very quick to pray that over myself sometimes. Y'all are all just going to think I'm a very selfish person over here. But if I get to the core of myself, sometimes I read that and I think I've got it underlined in my Bible. Who knows how long it's been underlined. And I think when I probably did that originally, it was because I was like, I believe that for myself. But I wonder if we believe that as much for other people, if we pray that as much for other people, because that's what Paul's not just talking about himself. He's talking about his friends, the people that he's in community with. And if you read the whole book of Philippians, you see that it wasn't all perfect over there. They had some of their own relational issues. Things were, kind of, there were some relationships that were in strain. And so I just wonder, is this a thing that, do you find yourselves praying this way over other people where you're like, yes, Lord, I believe over other people that you would be just as that you're just as confident that he's going to finish his work in them as he would for you.
Well, Alita, it's a perspective changer, right?
Yeah.
If as I pray it and I believe it, I actually am better able to show up in community with that person.
That's right.
I don't think as much as I should. I would say I pray more that God would complete great things in me before I pray that over other people. I mean, that's just honest.
Right.
But again, Krista, what you're saying is, as we do it, it changes us. It changes perspective. It changes how we see people, how we feel about people, how we look at people, a little bit more compassion and grace for one another when we do.
Totally. And Mel, what that really is it's growth. It's discipleship. As soon as I start practicing this, I'm growing in my faith and growing in my love for people and looking more like Jesus in the world.
Right. And that makes sense then about living in community. Because if it was about me, then we're not really living well in community.
That's right.
Right? If it's all about me, I pray for me, I want everything for me, then that's not being, part of community the way that it's supposed to be.
That's right.
Yeah.
I love that Paul is, so that he kind of, this is again, just some things that stuck out to me in that first little bit. And then if we move on to the later half of chapter 1, Paul talks about, or he describes in verse 27, what it looks like to live in unity with one another as a community. So he's taught us what it looks like to pray for one another, and now what it looks like to actually do the thing and live in community, or live in unity. And so verse 27, I'll read it out loud. It says, "Whatever happens, conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ. Then, whether I come and see you or only hear about you in my absence, I will know that you stand firm in the one Spirit, striving together as one for the faith of the gospel, without," and it goes on in verse 28, "without being frightened in any way by those who oppose you." So there's this interesting thing I was thinking about. He says, first of all, conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel of Jesus Christ. But then he follows it up and he talks about standing firm as one in the Spirit and striving together for the faith of the gospel. So I guess we could just boil that down to say that part of living worthy of the gospel is living in unity, which is a pretty wild, like if you really think about the implications there, that part of the gospel of Jesus Christ, part of living it out, is that we can't just be siloed off from one another. We don't get to do that. It doesn't matter if we're extroverted or we're introverted. Like we all have our stuff, but there is this call to live in unity. Now, having said that, I think we can all agree that just because we're the church, it can still be messy. Community can still be hard. And
it is hard. Like at time now where we are so polarized.
Yes.
We are not unified.
That's right.
This is a hard call, I'll be honest, because there are people that I don't want to be unified with. I don't want to be thinking, oh, the call is unity, when they're so different from me, when their ideologies and political stances and all of those things are different. That's hard.
So hard.
But so I'm deeply convicted in this part, because it is a working of me as well, and to say, what does that mean when there are people that really rub me the wrong way, or I think differently of them?
That's right.
That's something I'm learning and thinking through as we read this chapter. This sense of unity.
Yeah.
Well, it's a beautiful segue into what we'll talk about in chapter 2.
Nice one, Krista.
I tell you what, way to set it up now.
It totally is set up. I am going to be waiting for that. But I just think that's really, really powerful about living in community means living in unity.
It does. And we're not saying it's easy. Nobody's saying
that's
it's easy.
Good, because I think people are like, okay, this isn't going to be easy.
It's easier said than done, and it's a great thing to just it could be just this idea that we keep up here, and we know we're supposed to do it, but we don't really want to. And that's why it's not just in Philippians, it's throughout Paul's letters. You see this constant call back to unity. Why? Because they were struggling with it too. It wasn't
this is not new.
Again, it just transcends our culture and time right now. This has been a thing always, that the church is trying to figure out, how do we function as followers of Jesus, as disciples of him, and live in unity with one another, to be ministers of reconciliation when we still don't agree on everything. And I just go back to, I was thinking of 1 Corinthians 12. We really are this beautiful, kind of a messy picture of one body, many parts, different gifts, different roles, but we need each other. I mean, that's just the bottom line. We need each other to really function fully in what Jesus has called us to do.
Yeah. So. We could talk for hours. But we do need to go to a break. And when we come back, Krista, Alita, and I are going to talk about how to apply Philippians 1 to our lives in a very practical and encouraging way. Stay with us.
Season 8 is all about getting to know you, the See Her Love community. Here are 4 ways to connect. Number 1, watch See Her Love anytime and anywhere on YouTube and Castle Media. Number 2, listen to the See Her Love podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Number 3, engage by visiting seeherlove.com, or my personal favorite, follow at See Her Love on Instagram. Finally, number 4, give to See Her Love in Crossroads by visiting seeherlove.com/give.
It is deafening. The noise of countless voices shouting thousands of messages, challenging values, chafing at history. One cause is overwritten by another, and yet one more, until any chance of unity is lost in the confusion. But there is a timeless clarion voice speaking hope, security, and life. It is God's voice in the Bible. A strong, clear signal in the deafening racket that reveals Christ and extends his invitation to a transformed life of goodness, joy, and peace. The Canadian Bible Society is compelled to make God's voice heard clearly above the noise.
I'm here in my hometown of Burlington, Ontario, hanging out downtown in our village square. And as I walk these cobblestone streets, I realize that it has taken a village to ensure that See Here Love's mission and vision is shared across Canada, around the world, that you are seen, heard, and deeply loved by God.
As a body of Christ, there is hope for us to grow and reconstruct together.
We couldn't do this work without you sharing life-changing stories of what Jesus is doing in people's lives, stories of hope and freedom and healing in areas that matter to me and to you.
I want to have the faith to believe that his plan is good, even when it's taking that detour that I don't really understand.
We have so much more to do and so many more people to reach with the life-changing message of Jesus. For a monthly donation of $25 or more, you can help us do just that. And we'll send you a special thank you gift of our favorite things. Go to seeherelove.com/give or call 1-800-265-3100 and join our See Here Love Village today. Well, welcome back to Conversations About Philippians with my good friends Alita and Krista. This has been fun.
Yeah,
I love
sure.
this hanging out and reading the scriptures, which I really believe is what we're supposed to do.
Yes.
Is that scriptures, sharing about our faith, should be in community, should be in the context of like friendship, learning together. So this is just really amazing for me to sit and listen and learn from the two of you. So this is great. So I know now that we're going to be talking about how we can apply Philippians 1 to our lives.
Right.
Take it away.
And so basically, I just want to ask a few questions just to get us going.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
Krista, I'll start with you.
Ready, Krista?
Are there any rhythms that you might share with us, with all of us, about just, things that you do on a daily basis or just on a regular basis that help you to remember to pray for the people in your life that are in your community that you don't even necessarily see all the time?
Well, that's a very good question. I've kind of got one of those double whammy things.
Okay.
So one of the things that I learned in this last year was how to voice text. So I actually can voice text in my car when I'm
So
driving,
practical.
and I say, "Hey, Suzanne, I love you. Haven't seen you for a while. Just know I'm praying for you right now on the low heat highway in Maple Ridge."
Amazing.
And
that's good.
And it's just practical.
It's very practical.
Do you always let a person know when
That
you
you
prayed
pray for them?
Not always.
Okay.
But sometimes I do, because I know how it makes me feel when somebody sends me a text and says, "Hey, Krista, I'm praying for you."
Yes.
It's like it floods me
It is.
with
It does.
joy. It floods me with, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
I'm in community.
And I like this. And I like this because a lot of times we'll say, "I'll pray for you."
Yes.
And then you're kind of like, okay. And you're like, oh, I wish you would just pray for me right now because I
Yeah.
could really use that encouragement.
Yeah.
Like, we just went through a really honest conversation and I could use your prayer. But then the people go,
Totally.
I'll pray for you. And then you're like, oh, okay, thanks.
Yeah, no, it's in the
You know,
moment.
yeah,
like
it's in the
on the
moment,
phone,
right,
phone
right.
or whatever. Like I've done that in parking lots, and I remember one woman in particular going through a really hard time, and I prayed for her right in the parking lot, and she says to me, "Nobody's ever done that for me before."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Really?" And I was just like, I was young. I was like your age, long time ago.
not too
Anyway,
long.
that's so powerful. So Alita, just putting it back to you. Like, tell us about those rhythms in your life.
You know what? I feel like I'm fairly decent if I remember somebody and I will text them or let them know the next time I see them. But I have had a problem. I call it a problem. I'll put it in quotes. Where let's say in the morning I'm doing my Bible study, and then all of a sudden, you know, my brain kind of goes wild. I'm a little bit like that, and I'll think of somebody. My practice has been to be like, oh, just stop. You know what? I'm spending time with Jesus right now, and so that's the part where when I read this, I was like, you know what? I'm going to start in that moment rather than just shoving it to the side, going, okay, I'm going to pray for them right now, and it's okay. And that's where I was saying earlier, it's just that quick, it can be the quick thing of, you know, just Lord, would you just bless them right now?
Totally.
And or I'm thinking of
Totally.
them.
And I think that's the key. I think to choose to live a life of prayer means open to praying silently when you see somebody on the road. But I have to be more of somebody who says, I'm going to pray for you right now. I'm going to pray for you. And, you know, some people say, man, but I feel embarrassed. I feel like I'm overstepping. I feel people will feel awkward when I go, can I pray for you? Listen, every time I have said to somebody, I'm going to pray for you, whether they are people who follow Jesus or not, or of faith or not, no one has said no.
No, you're
Not
absolutely
one
right.
person has said, please don't pray for me. And so I think we need to be a people that's like, courageous and just do it.
Yeah.
And if they say no, then it's okay. Then I'll just pray for them silently as I walk away.
But you're showing community
Right,
when
right.
you're doing that. You're showing that you care. And I think people are desperate for that, whether they're people of faith or not.
Yeah.
And as we practice it, we show Jesus to the world.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. And I think that kind of leads into like unity. Like if we can show that we care, we're compassionate, we want to pray, we want to intercede and say, you know, God needs to hear your need because he loves you.
Right.
That's a total step into
Right.
unifying us when we, like I said, when we're polarized, because prayer can bring us
Right.
to that same place.
Right, it
Right?
shifts our hearts towards them. And then when
Right.
there's that cool thing that happens when somebody texts me or you text somebody else to say, I'm praying for you, or if I receive that text, I feel so seen, not just by them, but like, Lord, that you would drop my name on that person's heart. I just feel so seen by you, and that's such a special thing. But also, it serves to unify us in community when you know that there are other people out there who are, and it just makes you feel like you belong to something bigger than yourself, which is the church.
And to
Right.
belong. I am seen, I am heard,
Yeah.
and we have a future together.
Yeah.
Those are belonging cues that we all need.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think even more so, like this whole, you know, as we were saying before the break about unity, because, you know, we've come out of a few years where we have, it's been difficult and hard, and a lot of issues have come to the surface. And we've seen it on socials, on where people stand on
Yes,
so many
that's right.
issues. And it's exhausting. It's been really difficult for people in the church, not in the church, in families, the breakdown of families, the breakdown of friends on issues. And more so than ever, we need unity. This living in community is not easy. It's hard, but I've seen the best of living in community. And man, I could not be where I am today without my community, without people who were with me, who showed up, who were for me, who might not have agreed with me or were a little disappointed in me and the decisions I made when I was younger, but stuck with me, prayed for me, prayed with me. Here I am.
Right. Unity
So-
doesn't mean agreeing on everything. That's
That's
yes.
exactly it.
And so just even based on what we've read here in Philippians 1, is there anything that you sense because of the strong call to unity that God would, like, just even practically ask you to do in the, maybe that's too personal of a question
No,
for you,
no,
Melinda.
you know, and it's exactly what I was saying, is that there are people that I am, I would say polarized, but we're different in the way we think and in how we do life. And I think this has really deeply moved me, convicted me, that I need to pray for them more, and I probably need to step one step closer to them to get to know them. Because sometimes we think they're so different, but when we get to know somebody, we realize we're actually more the same than we are different. And I think the choosing to step forward is the choosing to be unified, to move towards unity, than like disparity or further away. So this is good for me. This is good for me.
And you know, Mel, it's so good what you're saying, because the bottom line is, you don't know what they're thinking or they're feeling or what they need. And for you to take that, like you said, one step closer toward them might be all that it takes to build an incredible bridge. That unity, that step of unity builds the community.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Step of unity builds the community. I like the rhyming because it stays with me.
Oh, there you go.
It
Sticky
stays.
statements.
And then just quickly, for the church, how can the church, and I say overall,
Right.
be a place of unity? Because both of you work within church. I know we don't have a lot of time, but
great
what would you
question.
say, just what can we do as the church?
Do you want to take that question, or should I?
You just do a quick little...
I would say that one of the things that we can do is, besides praying for each other, which Paul almost treats that as a given, we should be praying for one another, is, I think one of the most unifying things, and this is so simple, but maybe this is a really practical thing, is to have meals together. I mean, I just, honestly, I think that sometimes we learn the most, I mean, that's such a simple base answer, but something about developing friendship over a warm meal, inviting people into your home, and just developing a friendship and a generosity towards one another, where you kind of, what you said, leaning in towards one another. I think the more you get to know people, the more you get to know their stories over, some chicken and potatoes or whatever the thing is, or a lasagna, whatever your thing is, then it's kind of, it serves to unite you in heart and mind. And
I love that.
Oh, I
So
gotta tell you this
a
thing.
meal.
I gotta tell you this thing. So my sister, she comes up to visit me once in a while, and she's like, Krista, she says, food is love.
it is.
Yes.
And I always, and we joke about no carb left behind. And the idea of that is so beautiful. And the other thing I would add to that, as the church, we need to keep the main thing the main thing. And we've not been good at that. We get all off on these little tangents and issues that totally sabotage unity. And I think that there's a need to get back into the Word of God and to look at what Paul says here and just go, you know what? This is the thing. It's what Christ has done for us. And so we're actually going to dive into that as we go into chapter 2. And I'm pretty excited about that.
Perfect segue. I wish we had more time, but we don't. So thank you so much, Krista, Alita, for this. Chapter 1, all about living community, prayer, and unity. Amazing. And I'm looking forward to chapter 2 with you. And this is about living a generous life. So we'll be talking about that. To you, our viewers and listeners, make sure you download our study guide so you can follow along with us, seeherelove.com/study guide. Make sure that you reread Philippians 1, answer the questions that we shared in the application. Invite your girlfriends and friends to come join us for next week. And also, to prep you for next week, read Philippians 2 so you're kind of tracking with us as you join us. And always know, as you read the scriptures, as you live in community, as you pray for others, you are seen, you are heard, and you are deeply loved by God. Thanks for joining us. Nicely done.
Okay.
Very good. Woo! Wow. That was awesome. Very well done. That was really good.
Good. Yes.
Okay, so let's hit it. Why don't you go to Krista? So let's talk about application. So if you want to we come back and you just do a little quick. Okay, so I'll say we're back, and then you could just say, so just quickly again, prayer, unity, maybe say a little thing, and then ask the first question.
I can ask Krista the first question because I think you sort of answered
Ask
it.
Krista the first question, then go, okay, so in application, what are we going to do this week? What are we going to do, and I would say this week because I don't like this whole leave it out there. It's I like being very directive, what are you going to do this week?
See Here Love thanks our partners who make this show possible.
Thank you for your ongoing support of Crossroads, a supporter-funded, nonprofit organization and member of the Canadian Centre for Christian Charities. Thanks to faithful people like you, we are able to continue producing See Here Love. You can write to Crossroads, P.O. Box 5100, Burlington, Ontario, L7R 4M2, or visit crossroads.ca to learn more about our programs.